Mr. Matt Gorgolinski. How are you?
Doing very well, Dominic. Thank you for having me on the show.
Are you kidding me? You had the craziest intro I've ever seen. You actually sent me a video.
Love it. Stood out, kind of like recruiting. Send something to
Yeah.
someone unique in recruiting, it'll stand out.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the work you put in. And I thought, okay, this guy worked this hard to get on the show, worked this hard to get in front of my audience. That's how we got the first meeting, right? And then from there, liked what you had to say. So, and it's a question I think a lot of us deal with here. Why the heck should we use a recruiter? And we're all, we have a labor problem right now. Mm-hmm. And so recruiters is part of the options out there, but a lot of people are resistant. They don't want a recruiter. So today, that's what you and I are going to talk about, right?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey, before I start, Matt Gorgolinski, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing construction business owners all around the world?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to dive a bit into that. So first of all, like you said, thanks so much for having me on the show. I've been following what you're up to, and you're just driving a ton of value to the industry at the end of the day. So great to see, super valuable stuff. And really at the end of the day, I came into this not by chance, right? Like it almost wasn't an accident. So basically graduated college, played baseball my whole life, played Division I sports, finished at a school called Lewis Clark State in the upwards part of Idaho, in the middle of nowhere. So as I was going through culture shock, growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area and then moving to Idaho, I finished my college career, right, playing baseball as a pitcher, and I didn't get drafted, right? So I was at a point where I'm like, hey, how can I make the most out of myself, my potential? How can I bring the most value to people, create the best life for my family, right? Like all this good stuff. And it ended up leading to me, number one, getting into my first job, which was home improvement sales, where my dad's the general manager of a home improvement company in California that does about 25 million a year.
Oh, so just a small startup.
Right. Now they're doing really well. They're about a 30-year-old window and door company for the most part. Okay. They do a little bit of stuff other than window and door, but basically my dad moved from the tech world and being like a leader in different types of, pretty large companies, reputable companies, and switching into construction and home improvement. And when he did that, he took me under his wing right after I finished school. So my first job was selling home improvement to families in their house and really selling construction services. So that's how I got to know the industry. One thing led to another. I ended up doing well in a sales position, right? Like I sold a few million in a couple of years, and I really loved it. Actually, it was something I enjoyed. And so what ended up happening was I saw the difference between what a quality salesperson looked like, for example, on my dad's team, and what someone who was maybe less of a performer looked like or was less dedicated, and how that impacted the company. So long story short, fast forward about 3-4 years, I did a ton of training, investing in myself in terms of marketing. How do I level myself up as a marketer and a salesperson? And really, how do I become the most valuable B2B sales and marketing expert that I can become by learning from other experts, right? Like my whole thing the last 5 years is just how do I learn from the smartest people in their own respective niche so I can on those skills and then transfer them to other people. So long story short, I actually ran a marketing agency too that helped home improvement companies and construction teams on the lead gen side, like building sales automation systems and running ads for leads. Yeah. And it just so happened that I found a huge gap in the market was these companies, they need top talent. And they don't really necessarily always have the means to land the right talent for whatever they need to hire for. Right. And I saw this actually going through my dad, like with his team, right? So that's kind of the long story short. I've done a few things over the time, really into construction, and the B2B skills of marketing and sales are recruitment. It's how do you find clients who need recruitment help, and how do you find candidates who are qualified, interested, and the right fit for your client, right? So
kind of that's a lot there.
It came full circle, kind of long-winded, but it came full circle.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Hey, I have to go back to this. Let's go back to baseball. Can I go back to baseball for a sec?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what was your journey to baseball to eventually getting on a college team? Like, did you always know you were going to be a pitcher? Did you start as a pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, I played baseball my whole life, right? So my dad actually played college sports too. My dad received a letter from pro scouts when he was in college playing ball. He was actually a beast. And my dad is a huge role model for me. We grew up together basically our whole lives, doing baseball together from age 0 to 18. So played baseball my whole life, like I said, up through high school. I transitioned into a pitcher only position. I used to hit, but I started doing pitching only at the end of high school. And then I pretty much always knew that I was going to play college baseball. I didn't know where. I had offers like my junior and my senior year, and I ended up picking Loyola Marymount as the school. But it was a really fun process.
Yeah, good for you. So just really quickly, because there's dads, moms, and dads out here listening who, we live for our kids. We run this business so we can spend more time with our family, and they might be nurturing a young baseball or softball star. What would you say to your younger self about how far you can get in baseball, and what should they do? As a parent, like what does a parent need to do to get that kid as far as they can go?
say it depends. I don't have any kids yet, so I can only look at like what worked for me. And so basically something that really stood out my whole life was when I didn't necessarily want to work, when I was like, oh, dad, do we really have to go to the park and take more ground balls or do more pitching? When I was 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
And so my dad would always push me to put in the work, right? And to not skip the important steps and not skip the things that are going to help me become better. And I think that was one of the most important things that I took away from how he parented me and how my parents parented me, was sometimes you have to do the hard things even when you don't feel like it if you want to be great at something. So, I mean, because you hear a lot of kids, dad, mom, I don't want to go to the park. I don't want to do
Yeah. It's raining.
I want to stay home and play video games or whatever. Yeah, whatever it is. But that's the stuff that builds a lot of character, in my opinion. And also being able to go through hard situations. Like, just because you face an adversity or a setback doesn't mean you shouldn't go through it. I think actually for me, a lot of the stuff in my life that's been great is on the other side of a setback, right? So
when you get cut from a team, or when you get no from a big client, or you lose a job at the last minute.
Yeah, or you have a tough situation, like you don't know if you're going to be a starter on the team, but you have to fight and grind to take the position, or you could take the easy way out and go on another team where you're starting, right? And so like little things like that have definitely, I believe, helped me build character over the years and taught me a lot about what it takes to be successful.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool. And I'm pretty sure there's parents out there who've gone, okay, thank you for that. I mean, one of the problems a lot of parents have, and because everybody listening here is a business owner, so you have to be a certain age to be a business owner. So we have kids, right?
Yeah.
But it's the time. I never want to be that dad. My son plays lacrosse. My daughter plays lacrosse at a very high level, and my daughter swims at a very high level. And I never wanted to be the dad who was at the game or at the practice, but on my cell phone the whole time. And I hated being the last dad there because I was at a call or in a meeting. Like, it just, I always feel like my kids watch that, and I do I'd like to make jokes. So I do a whole bunch of things with my family to make sure my kids don't push me down the stairs when I'm in the hospital. That's my
good thing to live by. Good piece to live by.
I tell my son that. I'm like, listen, I take you fishing so you don't push me down the stairs when I'm old. He's like, Dad, don't say that. But that's how I think. I really think about what's the impact of the thing I'm doing or not doing with my kids. But so that lesson you learned from your parents, or observationally from your dad, how does that carry over into business success? Doing the hard work, coming up against the failures, pushing through. How do you see that parallel?
I mean, I think it's so clearly transferable for me because, like, as you're an entrepreneur and you go through the phases of growing a company and, dealing with different trials and tribulations, challenges, positives, negatives, you have to learn to be resilient. It's like, I've heard this before, and it's so true. If you're a business owner, one moment you can get off the call with somebody who you're putting out a fire, right? Like, it's not an ideal conversation, challenging conversation. 5 minutes later, you're on the phone with the CEO. They need help with a project manager search or an executive search, and you need to give them your best. So being able to shake it off, have resilience, and be able to continue and give your best, even when things aren't going your way, I think is something that I really took away from that. And on top of that, kind of just to digress or go back a bit, I think number one, it's important to push your kids. If I was to be like giving parental advice from like my experience, but also you want to know that your kid actually enjoys what they're doing. Like, you don't want to push them to be doing something they hate, right? At the same token. So my dad knew I loved baseball, and he also knew that sometimes maybe I was a little lazy, or maybe I just didn't want to put in work when I should have put in work. So he pushed me for that reason. He didn't push me because he wanted me to love baseball. He pushed me because he knew I wanted to be great. He knew what it took to improve, and he knew that I didn't know that, and that there was gaps in my knowledge that would have caused me not to do things that would have helped me improve, right? So I wanted to make that distinction there too.
Yeah, no, those are great. And, we're here to talk about recruiting, but we're all people. We're all here to help each other. And when we help each other, we get paid. I hope you don't mind me saying that. Is anybody on the show offended that I help people and I get paid for it? They help people build fences, renovate homes, do roofs, excavation. They get paid for it. You get paid for what you do. But I want to help people. Amen. The benefit is I get paid. But I just, that's all, I really just want to help. And it sounds like it's the same with you. And your dad wanted to help you. And the benefit is you get as far as you can go in your case, baseball, right?
100%. And the more that you can keep that mentality of helping people, I think the longer a relationship can last. Like, for example, from my perspective, the more I help a company recruit, the more I bring them great people and act like a real partner in their process, the more they come back. But on the flip side, if we don't well, and if we don't do what we say we're going to do, then on the flip side, it's going to end a relationship early when that's not our goal. Our goal is long-term, right? Yeah. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something that I used to say a lot more. I have to say it more, which is my job is to throw enough value at the world that I'm happy with the overspray.
Mm.
Right? So just push out value, push out great content, have great guests, talk about the important things that business owners need to hear that take them off the path of maybe the Groundhog Day of just running the business, employee problems, customer problems. What do you mean you can't find 2x4s? Or we're out of 2x4s in the entire state? You know, those kinds of things. And you're trying to run a company. So that perspective is helpful. Now, you said something else that's really important is you continue to invest in yourself. You've gone and you've got coaching or insights, or you've joined programs. What made you do that? Did that come over from your sports background, or what made you look at yourself and say, hey, how do I hone up my skills?
That's a really good question, actually. So my mom is probably the biggest driver of this. My mom has always been the one to be really heavy on personal development. So when it comes to, like, for example, Tony Robbins, she loved Robbins and like him as, you know, someone who helped her shape her views of how she can improve her quality of life, or however you want to define it, right? Like a performance coach. And so when I was 15 through 18, probably, she would take me to these events. She would take me to Tony Robbins and I would go along.
Fantastic.
It was great. It was life-changing, right? And then when I graduated college, I actually with one of my best friends to Tony Robbins's, like, it was life, wealth, and business type of thing. It was like a week-long event or so. And it was awesome. And it basically just like set me on the path of personal investment and development. And long story short, I just believe that if I want to do what I want to do, and I have big aspirations for my life, and I have a lot of people I want to help. So if I want to do that, I'm only to the level I want if I can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from people who have done it already, you know, and like not have the learning curve that I would have to deal with myself if I didn't have the guidance or the mentorship.
Right.
It's one of the biggest pillars I live my life on. I definitely wouldn't be doing what I do if I hadn't had such great mentors.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm glad your parents took you through that. And I hope people listening understand, you know, we didn't talk about this before at all, but it's a great revelation that you've invested in yourself. Your parents invested in themselves. Their son, you, saw that, invested in themselves. And although people listening might not think this, if your kids are in the car listening to you, or, you know, alongside you, listening to you on a, how do I say this? If your kids watch you and see you doing the things like listening to podcasts to make your life go forward, they're going to follow that path, however they decide to go. It doesn't matter if it's quilting or music or business or sports or faith, whatever it is, right? We want to show them that path by taking the actions we need to take. Anyways, not the topic of today, but your intro gave me so many questions that we could go on for a couple hours, and we got to get this done in less than an hour.
I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to roll.
All right, thank you. So let me do this. Let's restate the interview theme for today, which is about recruiting. You know, let's have a look at the market from a business owner's perspective. What's it like right now for somebody trying to recruit somebody into the trades? Let's restate that.
Well, it's kind of a hard question to answer generally because there are so many nuances to what type of role are you recruiting for? What does your value prop look like? What are your goals? What are the goals of the candidates you're talking to? So there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, something that's a good rule of thumb to know is that it's competitive. Really, no matter what role you're going after, it's competitive because there's a lot of open jobs and there is a fight for top talent. It's not easy to land it. So that's just the general landscape. Is it's not easy. Like, even we work with some of the largest contractors in the US and we work with startups. So in a range in between. So we see the problems of people at the top and people at the bottom and people in between. And it's a pretty common theme that it's competitive no matter what. Even if we're talking about labor talent, blue collar in the trenches labor talent is super competitive, hard to find great talent. Just like a PM or an estimator or an executive, if you want to expand, right? They're all not easy roles to fill, but that's why recruiters have a job. And that's also why these companies are putting more of an investment and a focus into recruiting, whether it be job boards or internal recruitment processes or working with a third party like myself. Super important. And there's been more of a focus on it, which also makes it more competitive if you think about it. Because if other people are focusing more on it, that just makes the space more competitive because more people are putting more effort into it.
Well, and you can't just do the same old. You can't say, well, I posted it on Indeed and we didn't really get anybody. Right. You made me remember some of the things that I hear when I'm talking to business owners about the challenges they face in trying to recruit. And they'll say things like, Dom, Tesla's opening up a factory down the street. When I say close, they're trying to lease some of my extra space for parking, like that close. They're like, I'm going to lose all of my potential talent for for the entry level positions. And then somebody else will say, Dom, Amazon's got 3 warehouses in my city that just announced a 4th. How are we ever going to find staff? Are you running across that as well?
Yes, but you can also have two sides of a mentality think. Number one, it could be these people could take my employees, but number two, it could be that's a whole talent pool right there of people who might not be satisfied at their company, which is a larger conglomerate, and they might be looking for more of a small type of company feel, a smaller culture, a more tight-knit culture, something where they have a voice, something where there's more recognition. First of all, it's not always about money with candidates. There's a lot more that goes into it. And second of all, if you have a really good employee value proposition, you could actually entice candidates to move from those type of companies over to your company, right? So depends on how you want to compete. You could either look at it as a threat, or which it could be a threat no matter what. And then look, it's always a threat. People are always going to be poaching your employees, whether you like it or not. It's just the nature of running a business.
Hey, we're trying to do it to somebody else, so let's not assume that they're the only ones, right?
And if you're doing something well, you have to assume people are taking notes and they're looking at how they can look at what you're doing and take it to improve, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. But it could be looked at from two different sides of the coin.
So let me go back for a second and ask you to define this employee value proposition. And keeping in mind that this is new language to a lot of people. So what does that mean? Let's say you got on the phone with one of the listeners at some point in the future and you said, what's your employee value proposition? And they said, 8 hours a day, Saturdays. But what is an employee value proposition?
Yeah, it's just like a sales value proposition. Like, what's the value prop of your company to your ideal prospect, your ideal candidate, to your ideal person you want to do business with? It's very similar to candidates.
What does it sound like? How would you want me to articulate it? If you were my recruiter and we were recruiting, let's say for a good estimator, let's just keep it at an estimator level because everybody at some point needs an estimator of their growth. Sure. So what do you want to hear me say, or what could I say that was perfect for a value proposition?
I think you have to ask the right questions in order to know the answer to that question. Like,
okay.
It's like sales. It's like saying, hey, why are you perfect for me? And then my question will be to you, I don't actually know, because I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you want. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know what you're able to offer. So I don't really know how to position it without that knowledge. But my point is, it's just a general rule of thumb. You want to talk to candidates, learn what their actual goals are for their career, what their goals are for their life, and then find out how you can align your offering with what they want. It's about finding out how to cater your value proposition, your offer to what the unique candidate wants, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
So you can know that your employee value proposition can consist of, we allow some flexibility in work. We allow part-time remote. We know we have a very competitive salary. We pay competitive salaries and we have a great bonus structure. We have an awesome training program. We have upward mobility in our company. These are all different examples of.
We have a great team. We provide uniforms. There's lots of training. All of the things that people would expect.
Yep.
You know how I'm not going to answer the question because you're the expert on this, but one of the things that I try to instill in people is when you're hiring somebody, think about the conversation they're going to have at their kitchen table when they go home. And I want them to have the conversation that says, honey, I finally found the company I've been waiting for my whole life. I don't want them going, it's a McJob. If I lose it, I'll just get another one.
Exactly. And that's why asking those questions is so important, because you can only know how well you resonate with someone if you know what their real goals are, if you have a transparent conversation. Just spitting a bunch of features and benefits of what your company offers without any knowledge of what they want could make it, you could miss the ball big time. Like, just to go back to the example of Tesla, right? Like, Tesla's moving down the street. Well, people quit their boss every day. That's why a lot of times when people quit their jobs, because they're quitting their boss or their team that they don't like being a part of. Yeah. So maybe you even offer a little less than Tesla, but you have a phenomenal value proposition, a great culture. You really vibe with the candidate. They really fit in. A lot of times people will accept that happily, right? And it'll be a long-term thought process. Hey, I like working here. I see growth potential. This is the type of team to be a part of. So I don't want to be a part of big corporate. I want to actually move to this space where I have more impact felt. So
yeah, it does make sense. And we've had other guests on the show who said the same thing. From your industry, American Window Concepts, a guy named Sean Yon in California, great interview. He talked about building culture and attracting the right people to his team, which at the same time repelled the wrong people. You know what I mean? Like, the wrong people don't even want to work there. And then you talk to Michael Kaplan, who's a franchisee who grew to be bigger than the franchise company.
Amazing.
Right? And he does carpet cleaning, except that never really comes up in conversation. It's a great job for people that want to be in an awesome team, feel supported, have a great job, wear a uniform, be trained, all of those things. Oh, by the way, we clean carpets. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I'll do that job.
I heard an awesome quote from a business owner we worked with one time, and he basically said, our company is not a window fixture company. Our company is a personal development company masqueraded as a window company. And so basically that was his mentality for how he framed it. And I was just super impressed. I got the chills when I heard it. I'm like, that's super impressive. I've actually never heard that. And putting focus on development will help find people who will be really grateful for your team, regardless of the fact that they stay for 10 years or not. They're going to be grateful, and they're going to say, that company impacted my life. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, you're ready for a good chuckle or a good inside, because everybody listening to the show, people listen to this show for a long time. What we say on this show is that this is about the business of the construction business. So I don't want you to be a contractor with a crew. I want you to be a business person who just happens to run a construction company. So very similar to that. I'm glad you said that, because it's that mind shift that we have to take when, like you said, we're up against a tough call with this client, a tough call with that vendor, and then we got to show up with a smile to the next one. It's the mindset that's going to get us through that.
100%.
All right,
100%.
let's get back to our technical part of recruiters. So that people can be prepared for recruiting the best they can, what are the kind of things that repel people from a company? Like if you got a great candidate, they come back to you afterwards and say, listen, I interviewed with Rubino. I don't think I want to work for that guy ever. Don't ever show me a company like that again. What would be the things that repel a good candidate?
That's an awesome question. So there's actually a lot, and we've ran into different scenarios that could really help you know sort of where you would fit in the equation. So one actually that stands out recently, that's actually an example that happened, was we're recruiting for a PM for luxury builds, luxury residential builds. And what ended up happening was we found a candidate who was super strong, worked for a local competitor. It just so happened that this candidate, the owner of their company, somehow knew the owner of our company who we were recruiting for. He spoke to the owner. The owner apparently was okay with them speaking. I don't know how that happened, but basically the owner ended up saying, hey, I don't know if you want to work for this company because I know someone who worked there. And although I know the owners, they let this person go with a pretty short notice. And there was just like a lack of consistency in the workflow, right? Like, for example, if you're a company who will hire somebody for one project and then have to let them go because you don't have consistency of work, that's something that a lot of the times will kill the reputation of a company in terms of someone who wants to think long term, right? Because they don't want to know that their job might be cut due to lack of work in 6 months to a year. So that's something that's super important. Another is just your reputation. I think people overlook their reputation sometimes and like how important your name the market. Like candidates will come back to us on a call. We don't talk about our client's name until we've defined a candidate is qualified for the role and they're interested in the role. And then we'll disclose our client's name just to keep things discreet for our client, unless you tell us different. But my point is, sometimes it'll happen where we'll go through the whole conversation. They'll say, this opportunity sounds phenomenal. This is perfect for my career. And then I'll tell them the name of the company and they'll be like, oh,
I know those guys.
I haven't heard good things about them, or I know those guys over there. And I don't think so. I'd love to hear about other opportunities you have though, like
just based on the name.
Just because they know too much of what they don't want to know, right? So you have to be careful that you're doing right by people, even when it doesn't matter immediately. Like doing good things for people just to help people, or being kind to someone when you didn't need to be, or it was a tough situation. Those little things, it's like a spider effect. It continues to kind of spiral outward. So keeping trends of goodwill and treating people right, your employees, your vendors, everyone who you affiliate with for some extent, reputation is really important.
Yeah.
And then value prop, right? Like, what's your offer? If your offer is below market, if your offer is not in line with what everyone else offers, and you're kind of saying like, hey, we're a great company with a great team, but unfortunately we're paying 60% less than market. Like, it just doesn't happen, So no. I'm exaggerating.
Well, not really. The only people that are willing to accept 60% less than current wage is owners.
Yeah.
And that's by choice. So owners who are listening to me, it's your choice if you're making less than what another, senior level executive making at a construction company. So Matt's given us some good advice here. Let's stay on it. So tell us how it works with a recruiter, because, and let me be the first to say, why the heck would I pay a recruiter? I mean, seriously, I could go run ads on Indeed. I can run ads on Facebook. I can hope and pray on Craigslist. Why would I pay you?
Yeah, we could literally talk about this all day, but just to kind of kick this off, to go back to the beginning, the conversation I had about seeing the difference between the salespeople in the company my dad runs, who are great versus who are not great. I'll make it more granular. The great person sells $250 a month in revenue, and the average salesperson sells between 50 to 100. So if you think about the difference, first of all, just in revenue, but it's not about revenue. It's also about profitability. The better salespeople sell at higher margins, and they sell higher margin. So not only do great people increase the revenue, but they increase the profitability in your company. They're more coachable. They need less hand holding. They allow management to focus on more higher level activities instead of just micromanaging the team. There's so much that goes into it. And that's just a salesperson. Let's say a PM, for example, a brand new PM with hardly any knowledge, needs a lot of training. They're pretty green. They can't handle a ton of workload. You don't really trust them to go fully back and forth communicating with clients, with vendors, however you schedule things. Or you have a super seasoned PM who can come in and handle 3 to 5 projects at one time that are perfect in your scope. And they actually improve your process. They improve the leadership of your team and they level up your culture. So, I mean, if you feel that you can go on Indeed, you have a consistent process for generating those candidates on Indeed who are top of the mark, who are great at what they do, then you should use Indeed. And if you can get in with referrals, not even paying for ads, you should do that. But the problem is it's really hard to recruit. Most times you don't find these type of people from referrals instantly. You advertise on Indeed, you typically find candidates who are unemployed or don't necessarily have the track record, like a plumber applying for a PM role, which there's not fitness there. So you work with a recruiter because number one, you want an asset and like an ear to the ground in the marketplace to hear what's going on in the market, to know if your offer is viable, to know what candidates are saying about your company, right? Because recruiters have that third party communication that's different than how you communicate with a candidate directly. And then on top of that, on top of the candidate communication, you want to make sure that you're able to basically, I lost my train of thought right there. Hopefully we could back this up. But basically, not only that, what was it?
Well, I can fill in. Recruiters, you ever heard that saying, it's who you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Recruiters are who you know. Because you guys have already been out in the market. You've been recruiting for, let's say, PM positions. And so you run across a couple of engineers, a couple of draftspeople, a couple of PMs. And then when I contact you and say, hey, I'm looking for a certain person, you've already got a roster of people that kind of raised their hand in the past. They weren't ready. But because you built that up over time, when I contact you, like, look, I've got 3 people that I think might fit right away. They may or may not. We don't want to make that promise. I would never expect you to make that promise. But I could at least see 3 people who are not searching Indeed on their phone from the bathroom at work right now, right? The right people might not be actually looking for work, but you guys know who has been looking for work and who might be interested because last year wasn't right for them, but now is. Am I on the right path there?
You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, you got to love when you lose train of thought. But essentially, the big value prop also of working with a recruiter is that they speak with candidates who your team probably isn't speaking to, right? Like, they have relationships with candidates who are with your top competitors, who have proven track records. And not only that, advertise on job boards or you're looking for referrals, you often sift through a lot of candidates who aren't the right fit. And you could waste hours and weeks and even months of your time and your team's time speaking with people who aren't the right fit. Whereas when we submit candidates to one of our clients, we typically submit between 1 to 5 resumes and someone gets hired because they're qualified. They come with proven track records. We have deep, thorough write-ups about their experience, what they've done, why they're a fit. And we've interviewed them for 30 minutes to an hour already. So you already have the vetting and the insight, and we've gone to places where you typically won't go. It's more of an exclusive talent pool than going on the job boards or looking at what you know. Yeah. And it's probably the most valuable piece because here's the thing. Most of the people on job boards, like we said, are unemployed. Most of the people who have proven track records, who are the top performers, are performing. And so if you could find a way to tap into that talent pool and consistently build a pool of those type of candidates to bolster what you're doing on Indeed and through referrals. If you don't need to pay a commission check to a recruiter, because it's not small in some people's perspective to pay it, it's definitely worth it in terms of return on investment if you hire the. But if you can get it done yourself, just do it. But it's really hard to find the right people consistently. So if you think about it, to kind of cap things off, you have two ways to go. Number one, you could not invest in talent acquisition and you can get someone who maybe you find the perfect person, but what you should ask yourself is if I find someone below the mark who's not that ideal person, what will that do to my company? What is the opportunity cost and what am I missing out on?
Well, it's a huge impact. It's like in a small company, hiring the wrong person is a massive impact. If your local phone company hires the wrong person tomorrow, it doesn't matter. They've got 6,000 employees. That gets watered down. But if you've got a crew of 5 people, just even if you've got a crew of 50 people and 1 or 2 of them are the wrong cancerous type employees, that's a huge percentage and it really impacts you.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the other side of that thinking is it's so important to hire great people, whether you're small or big, but it's even more magnified when you're small. That's right. For every time you hire someone who is not better who's not going to make your team better, if you think about it, it's just making your team worse at the end of the day. It's okay. You're basically saying it's okay to make my team a little bit worse, just a little bit worse, but it's okay. And if you hire someone better, then you raise the tide. They improve culture, they improve process, they make your company more profitable if it's possible for their role.
Yeah.
So it's a really important perspective to think, like you said, return on investment and opportunity cost. It's not about, if you're thinking long-term with your company, what does it cost? It's about what is the cost over a year to 2 years to 5 years if I hire someone who's okay versus I hire someone who's excellent and comes with much more experience, value, background.
Well, they save you time and they save you cycles. And I'm going to say this as a reminder to the people listening to the show. Folks, we've talked about this before when we talk about revenue responsibility per hour. And it's a simple calculation, guys. You can all do this yourselves as I'm talking about it. And Matt, I'll share it with you here too. I just want you to think about your total sales last year and divide that by the number of hours you worked last year, right? So we'll just use $1 million because it's a nice round number. No disrespect to people doing 600,000 who are dreaming of doing $1 million. No disrespect to those of you doing 5 million. Just use that number. Now, let's say you work 2,000 hours a year, which is 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. We have to stop for a second because everybody's laughing and the coffee has come snorting out of their nose. Every business owner works more than that. But look, $1 million divided by 2,000 hours is $500 an hour. So for every hour you're messing around, posting on Indeed and maybe trying something on Facebook on your own, you're taking away your opportunity to add value to your own company at the rate of $500 an hour. Because your responsibility, my responsibility as the owner, is at the $500 an hour level. And so I think that plays into this as well, is that the opportunity cost that I'm losing is I'm throttling the company. It's the same as if I go and dig a hole when the fence crew needs to dig holes. I can do it. I just can't actually do that. You guys need to do it. I can't dig the fence post holes. They need to be done. They have to get done by our company, but they have to get done by somebody else, not me, because I got to go get the next gig. I got to manage this company, and that's $500 an hour.
And if you think about it, it's $500 an hour, and it's also whatever lost time that you have as well. Because as a business owner, you can only do so many things in a day. You can only wear so many hats, especially at one time. So if you're saving all that time and reinvesting it into your company and allowing someone who's an expert to come in and do it for you, not only will it accelerate your company by finding better people, but you'll also be able to focus on the macro and focus on higher level tasks and continue to grow. Yeah.
One of the things that I learned, you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. Right. So my business partner was Brian Tracy. So for those of you who don't know Brian Tracy, if Tony Robbins spoke at a conference at the convention center downtown last weekend, Brian Tracy was one of the other big speakers there, those guys. Right. So he's my old business partner. And I learned something pretty interesting from him and from other construction multi-gajillionaires I've met and worked with over the years. Construction millionaires and big entrepreneurs, they don't waste their time recruiting. They're going to say, hey, that Gorgolinski guy, I like him. Go hire him. Go ask him what he's doing. Does he want to come over to our team? They don't mess around with this all dancing. Oh, maybe we'll post an ad here. They identify who top talent is, and then they send somebody from their team to go have a coffee with that guy. Ask him what he wants. Ask him when he's ready to move over. And maybe Matt says, and thanks, Dom, I'm not ready to move over to your team. I appreciate it. But 2-3 years later, when he's having a bad day at work, guess what he does? Calls up old Dommy and says, hey, we should have a coffee. Top business owners, top millionaires, that's how they operate. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, you bring up such a good point. Building those relationships, thinking long-term is so important. And that's another really valuable reason to either put improvement or focus on your internal recruitment process, or to work with someone like an external recruiter who can build those relationships, engage them, and nurture them over time. Because if you have a real partner, then you tell me, Matt, this is a superintendent. This is a hitter. I need this person on my team. I would love them on my team. And I'd like you to talk to them, which our clients do often with us. They'll say, this company or this person in particular, we'd like you to go do some homework on them. So what ends up happening is when you have a conversation with that type of person, it might not be now, it might be in the future, but you have people in your corner who are actually doing the pounding of the pavement. And if you land that person, you know that it will help your company level up.
Yeah. There's something that we talk about in coaching and in entrepreneurship is about intentionality. So you use the example of a site super. If I say to you, hey, Matt, go after this site super. I like that guy. I like everything he's about. You're going to come back to me and go, Dom, the guy's super happy where he is. But you know what's the funniest thing is he said his best friend, who's also a site super, might be interested in the conversation, because site supers hang out with other site supers. Estimators hang out with other estimators. Engineers hang out with other engineers. And so it's really just a point of leverage here, right? The reason I use a nail gun is because I don't want to use a hammer. It's a leverage tool. And so the reason I would use a recruiter, I'm speaking on your behalf, Matt, you got to pull me back. But the reason I would use a recruiter is because it's cheaper and faster for you to find the right person than for me to waste my time doing it.
Definitely cheaper, faster, and depending on your company or like how you want to approach recruiting, some people just don't want to be known who's consistently poaching their competitors' talent. Like regardless of the fact that they
Sure.
might, some people are more okay with having that reputation than others, but no matter what, professional, that we keep it professional and discreet during our search. So that means like people aren't going to know you're poaching until candidates defined as qualified and interested, right? And so on top of that, if you can do it yourself, great. If you want to do it yourself, but people actually appreciate the discretion a lot of the time too.
Yeah, I want to give a nod to some of the professional industry associations that I know out there. I know that in the architectural millwork associations, some of them have a professional code of ethics that if you're a member of the association, you can't poach from each other. But that doesn't stop their PM, their estimator, their engineer, their foreman from walking over and asking or finding out about things, right? So they professionally, they say, let's not poach from each other because we all have to work on the same jobs.
And actually, one other thing to add too, another big reason that companies could benefit using a recruiter if they're considering it is not just from the recruitment, it's from the consulting. It's everything outside of, going to the candidates, talking to the candidate. It's having discussions about the market, about salaries, about compensation, about where you stand in the market. A lot of that could help you. Like if you hire a recruiter and you improve your offer, that could help you land a candidate where you might not even have had to pay the fee at the end of the day because you might have found someone after just working with a consultant for a little bit. So the consulting piece can really help clients hone in their process, get better clarity, get the decision makers on the same page, which helps you act faster and make better decisions.
What's the onboarding I should expect? Now we're not talking about Matt and big league talent, but just in general. What's the process I should expect when I reach out to a recruiter? Because let's say I'm a construction company. I've got a crew of 5, so 5 plus me. And I'm not going to say what trade it is. Doesn't matter if it's residential, doesn't matter if it's commercial. Yeah. What should I expect as a business owner opening up that conversation with a professional trades recruiter?
So opening up the conversation and onboarding. So those are two slightly different topics, but I would say that you want to look out from my perspective for a few things on each. You want to make sure that up front that the person isn't just collecting a job order, right? They're not like, hey, send me the job description. I don't really need to talk to you on the phone. All I need is a JD and I'm going to go send you some resumes. I'll probably have over 10 in the next week. You can check them out and let me know what you think.
That sounds like a dream. Sorry, why is that bad?
So here is why it could potentially be bad. So it sounds like a dream, but as someone who is a business owner or an employee at a company not wanting to waste their time on the hiring process, if you receive 10 resumes and they know nothing about your company or your value prop or your mission, and they don't know that much about you, they're just sending people who generally fit a mold, but that mold can be totally different from what your company needs, right? So the best recruiters I've always known have always taken the time to get to know their client and their needs before ever starting a search. If a client comes to me and says, hey, Matt, we don't have time for an intake session. We don't want to talk to you and get to know you and build a relationship with your team. We just want candidates. Yeah, we won't do business with them because we don't believe we can do the best job helping them. If we aren't treated as a partner and we don't really understand their value prop and what their ideal mission is, their candidate is, what does success look like for this candidate a year out, it's really hard for us to do a good job, and it will come back to bite us, and we don't want that to happen because our reputation is based on quality. So that's something that it really stands out, is making sure that the recruiter you work with, it's important in my perspective that they take their time to actually get to know you and understand your business and your needs. If that's not there, you hear a lot of horror stories from the contingent recruiting space because that's typically what it is. You hire 5 to 10 recruiters at one time, maybe just to get a bunch of volume. They send you 10 resumes each. You're swamped with 150 resumes. Each of them are probably a 30% fit. And now you're stuck vetting resumes just like you were before on Indeed, except you have more to vet and you have to pay more money to get the placement. So for me, it's really just about forming a partnership. If you want to work with a recruiter who does well by you, treat them like a partner. And same goes for recruiters and their clients. You want a client to respect you and come to you and give you business consistently because you do a good job. Do a good job. Build a real relationship. Communicate. Call them. Speak to your clients on the phone. Treat them like they're a partner. And it goes both ways, right? So basically for me, overall, you want to build a partnership. That's at the end of the day what the truth is. You want someone who's a recruiter who's invested in your team's success, who really understands you. And that's the most important thing for me when looking at a recruiter. And also, you want to know they understand your business in general. The reason we do construction, architecture, and engineering is because we come from it and we train our team all the time on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I think has really stood out from our clients, what they say they value as well.
Well, they have to value it, because I'll tell you what, people can tell when you don't speak the language. Right.
Sure.
So think about, there's recruiters for all sorts of industries. So let's just say recruiters for dentists, as just making that up. If I'm a recruiter for a dentist, then I don't understand the language of running a dental practice, and I don't understand the language of dentistry. And I call a dentist, and he asks what kind of equipment you've got, or, how you treat clients, what's the patient care profile. And your recruiter goes, I don't know. It's a nice office. I was in there the other day, great couches. That answer makes that potential dentist say, I'm not, what are you talking about? This is off. I'm done. Not talking to you. Right. And so you want to have somebody who understands the language a little bit, because PMs, engineers, estimators, whatever, GMs, they understand the language, and they're going to expect somebody to at least know the language enough that they can make that a comfortable transition, because everybody's BS filters are up when you get an unknown call from an unknown number talking about this new opportunity.
Yeah.
Right, for some prince who's been
I'm working with this dentist right now. Really cool tools. You remember the one when you were a kid that you spin your finger on and it cleans your teeth? Like that's the type of you don't want to have with a recruiter, because that means they probably don't understand your business.
They don't understand. Yeah.
I actually tell this to companies sometimes when we'll reach out to them. It's like, just because someone worked with Legos as a kid doesn't mean they're qualified to work for your construction company. So it kind of goes to say the same for really any industry. You kind of want to know the ins and outs of what makes someone good. If you understand, for example, what makes a good project manager, number one, you know how to ask the right questions to get the right answers, or to get answers that you need insight on. But number two, you understand what the answers mean. So you can actually articulate, or you can interpret the answer, understand like what they're saying and how that can add value to the client's process or not, and then make a decision based. That same recruiter who knew nothing about construction could have just heard everything the person said, glanced over it, and said, okay, you know what, this person sounds pretty, I'm going to submit them. Whereas we knew this person acted more with subs, less with the actual teams. And so they don't have that management or high level experience, right? It just, that differentiation of knowledge has been helpful for our clients.
You just made me remember something that I had learned is I have to be very conscious when I'm interviewing people to ask a question the right way. And I think recruiters would be better at this than I would be, because I tend to give the answer when I ask the question. Right. And so somebody smart on the other side of the table, I might say something like, look, our values are very important to us. Tell me when values became part of this. I just made that up, right? Our values are very important. Tell us how values plays a part in your day. Well, that guy's going to say, well, values are important to me as well. Right. And this, so I fed them the answer by the way I asked the question. So I'll put this out to people listening. If you find that you've been hiring people, but you find you're hiring the wrong people, maybe the bottleneck is your interview process. And maybe that's why you call a Matt or a recruiter and say, hey, look, we got to fix something here. I'm ready to hire the right people. We're poised for growth. The thing holding us back in this whole big piece of paper I've got that's the plan for my business is people. Once I get people figured out, profits will follow, all of that stuff. But it might just be the way we're answering or asking our questions. And I know I've been guilty of it.
100%. The way you ask questions is really, really important. And that's actually something we work with our clients on. If they don't feel confident in the hiring process, it's like a part of the piece we have to consult on. Because if we send them a bunch of great candidates, but their hiring process isn't teed up properly, they're going to miss the candidates, and it's going to be a miss. And one, just throwing this out there kind of randomly because we're on this note, it's actually not that random, but something really important to focus on is making sure that someone who's passionate about your company is representing your company in the first interview. The first call you have with a candidate, you want someone who can really represent your offer and your employee value prop well, so that when you're speaking with a great candidate, they get a great first impression of your company, right? That is super important to put an emphasis on.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to all of the simple systems we have to have in place, which is hopefully why people are listening to the show, getting great insight from guys like you. Hey, Matt, if somebody wants to find you in this big wide world, how do we find you? Are you findable?
Pretty findable, right? So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Matt Gorgolinski. Name's pretty phonetic, Gorgolinski. You can find me on my email, matt@bigleaguetalentco.com, or you could just call me direct, 650-773-0111. I look forward to helping construction companies. We love doing what we do. And if you're even just looking to talk shop, you want to strategize, you want to know, how can I, make the best preparation for my next big hire? Or, my recruitment process feels a little out of whack. I'd like to talk to someone who does this day in and day out. Feel free to just reach out. We're happy to provide value. It's it's about relationships and recruitment. So we love to help however we can.
That's what you said, the whole interview. It's about the relationships and the process. BigLeagueTalentCo.com. Is that a nod to baseball?
Yeah, absolutely.
Big League. And so BigLeagueTalentCo.com.
Yeah, exactly. BigLeagueTalentCo.com.
Yeah, interesting. That's good because I think of Big League Chew now and I want one.
I had some Big League Chew yesterday, actually. Blue raspberry.
You got it in my head. All the guys in Texas are like, "You're not chewing now, Dom? What the heck?" Right. I got chew in as we speak.
Right. No doubt.
All right. Hey, Matt, thank you so much. Really, really insightful interview. And I know we started it in a different direction than you might have anticipated, but I appreciate that insight because that excellence in sport, in music, in whatever it is, it does transfer over. And then you seem to, this is me being a business coach now, you seem to have a thirst for knowledge, and that's carried over into this too.
Absolutely. It's one thing that's really actually made life fun for me is learning new things, leveling up, finding new ways to grow. It's something that actually makes life very fun for me. So I'm glad you realized it. I appreciate you realized it. And it's definitely the same about you. I've picked up the same type of vibe from you the whole time I've got to know you. So really appreciate it. I hope this show brought value to your audience. I hope they can walk away with some nuggets for their process to improve it.
Well,
one great hire can really bolster a company and take it to the next level. So I wish everyone who's hearing this all the best.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you to stay on the line because you mentioned that you did professional sales for windows and doors. Windows and doors?
Windows and doors. And
Okay.
actually, it was like a little bit of exterior coating too. So like it's similar to Rhino Shield or Tex Coat. It's like the lifetime paint product.
Sure. Okay. The elastomers.
Yeah.
I might have you back to talk about that. Stay on the line. We'll talk about that after this. Thanks for checking in, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dominic.
Bye.